December 9th, 2008, began with a chilling silence that blanketed the streets of Chicago, yet inside a modest home on the city's north side, that silence was about to be shattered by the weight of the federal government. At exactly 6 o'clock, FBI agents arrived at his doorstep. They were not there for a standard briefing. They were there to arrest the sitting governor of Illinois on charges of sweeping federal corruption. This was a direct strike at the heart of the democratic process, executed at a moment when the eyes of the entire world were already fixed on the state of Illinois. Rod Blagojevich was a man who seemed built for the camera. A charismatic, two-term Democratic governor, he was best known for his signature hair and a populist rhetoric that resonated with the working class. Then he portrayed himself as a fighter for the common person, a reformer who would take on the old guard. Yet beneath that polished exterior and the tracksuits he favored during his morning jogs, a far more cynical reality was being recorded by federal investigators. For years, the FBI had been listening, and what they heard was a governor who viewed his public office not as a position of service, but as a personal commodity to be traded for the highest price possible. The centerpiece of the federal case was something truly historic. Just weeks earlier, the nation had elected Barack Obama as president. This victory left a massive void in the U.S. Senate, a vacant seat that the governor of Illinois had the sole power to fill. To Rod Blagojevich, this wasn't a solemn responsibility to find the best representative. To him, it was a massive business opportunity. He saw the empty Senate seat as a bargaining chip that could be exchanged for personal wealth, campaign contributions, or a high-paying executive position after his term ended. The timing added an incredible layer of tension. Between Obama's historic victory in November and the cold December morning of the arrest, the political landscape of Illinois became a marketplace of illicit deals. While the nation looked forward to a new era of hope, the governor's office was preoccupied with a frantic pay-to-play scheme. Blagojevich was desperate. He was facing significant personal debt and felt trapped by the limitations of his current government salary. He needed an exit strategy, and he believed the Senate appointment was his ticket out of financial mediocrity. And this desperation led to the most infamous moment of the investigation. On the FBI wiretaps, Blagojevich was caught in a moment of raw, unfiltered greed. Speaking about the Senate seat, he uttered words that would forever define his legacy. "I've got this thing and it's fucking golden, and I'm just not giving it up for fucking nothing." It was a quote that stripped away any pretense of political maneuvering. It was the sound of a man treating a seat in the world's greatest deliberative body like a piece of stolen merchandise. When news of the arrest broke, the public reaction was one of absolute shock. The Obama transition team, busy preparing for the inauguration, found themselves thrust into a political firestorm. They had to distance themselves from a man who had once been an ally. And the gravity of the situation was underscored during a press conference by U.S. Attorney Patrick Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald described Blagojevich's actions as a political corruption crime spree that shocked even the most hardened observers. The scope suggested that this wasn't an isolated incident. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are currently watching from. This wasn't just about one seat. It was about a systemic pattern of extortion and bribery that had finally been intercepted. The FBI hadn't just caught a man. They had intercepted a machine prepared to sell the very essence of public trust. The story was only beginning, and the massive evidence would soon reveal the true depth of the rot within the state's leadership. To understand how a governor could reach such a point of audacity, one must look back at the trajectory of his career. Rod Blagojevich did not emerge from the shadows as a villain. He began as a beacon of hope for many working voters. His ascent through the Illinois House and then to Congress was marked by an uncanny ability to connect with voters. When he reached the governor's mansion, he did so on a platform of reform to clean up Springfield. However, the environment he inherited was steeped in corruption. In Illinois, corruption was not an anomaly, it was a norm. Blagojevich was the fourth governor to face criminal charges in recent history, following a line of leaders who exchanged integrity for influence. Initially, Blagojevich focused on serving his constituents before greed took over. This environment created a cynical pay-to-play culture where public service felt like a business transaction. And the mechanics of state law handed him a powerful weapon in 2008. Illinois law gave the governor the absolute power to appoint a temporary successor to a vacant U.S. Senate seat without a special election. With no requirement for such a vote, one man held keys that could shift the balance of power in Washington. Blagojevich viewed this mandate not as a duty but as a jackpot. He saw the candidates for the seat not as servants, but as assets in an auction. To him, the vacancy was a literal gold mine waiting to be exploited. Names like Valerie Jarrett, a close advisor, and Jesse Jackson Jr. circulated in the governor's private discussions. Blagojevich and his chief of staff, John Harris, treated these names like high-value cards in a poker game. FBI recordings captured the two men weighing the benefits of each candidate choice. Wait, if they appointed a candidate favored by the Obama administration, they wanted something in return. They discussed securing a cabinet position for the governor, such as Secretary of Health and Human Services, or a role leading a private nonprofit. These negotiations involved lobbyists trying to navigate the governor's erratic demands. He was essentially auctioning a piece of the government to the highest bidder. But the corruption extended far beyond the Senate seat. The federal investigation uncovered a web of extortion touching multiple sectors of Illinois life. In one egregious instance, Blagojevich was accused of shaking down executives of a children's hospital, withholding funding for pediatric care until a campaign contribution was made. His reach extended to the free press. Enraged by the Chicago Tribune, he threatened to withhold state assistance for the historic Wrigley Field unless the owners fired editors who dared to challenge him. This level of interference shocked legal observers. The FBI managed to pierce the governor's inner circle by obtaining court-ordered wiretaps on his campaign offices and personal home phone. This massive collection of evidence provided a direct perspective of a government operating like a criminal enterprise. The tapes revealed a man often profane and agitated regarding his own financial survival. When the pressure began to mount, Blagojevich adopted a strategy of denial. He and his lawyers argued that the recorded conversations were nothing more than political horse trading, the kind of talk common in Washington. They claimed his speech was protected by the First Amendment, like asserting that discussing a deal was not the same as committing a crime. The FBI agents listened in disbelief as the governor plotted his next move. This scandal created an immediate crisis for the incoming Obama administration as they prepared for the inauguration. The president-elect launched an internal review led by his future White House counsel to ensure no one on his staff engaged in improper deals with the governor. They had to prove to a skeptical public they were untainted by the pay-to-play schemes unfolding in Chicago. As the transition team distanced themselves, the walls closed in on Blagojevich. The evidence was mounting, the public was outraged, and the political machine that had once supported him was now preparing to dismantle his career and legacy entirely. The political fallout was swift and merciless. Yet by early 2009, the Illinois General Assembly moved with unprecedented speed to strip the governor of his power. The Illinois House of Representatives voted nearly unanimously to impeach him, and the state Senate followed suit with a vote of 59-0 to remove him from office. He became the first governor in Illinois history to be impeached and removed, a permanent stain on a career that once promised reform. The legal immunity of his office had vanished, leaving him to face the full weight of the federal justice system as a private citizen. In 2010 and 2011, the world watched as the federal trials unfolded in a Chicago courtroom. The central evidence was the hours of FBI wiretaps that the public had only heard snippets of previously. Jurors sat in silence, listening to the profanity-laced demands and the raw, desperate schemes of a man who believed the law did not apply to him. The prosecution meticulously connected the recordings to specific actions, painting a picture of a leader who viewed his public trust as a personal ATM. Despite his defense team's attempts to frame the conversations as mere political bluster, the recordings were too explicit to ignore. The legal battle was complex, spanning 2 trials, but the finality of the verdict was undeniable. Blagojevich was ultimately convicted on 17 counts, including wire fraud, attempted extortion, and conspiracy to solicit bribes. The most serious charges centered on his attempt to sell the Senate seat and his efforts to shake down the Children's Hospital. When it came time for sentencing, Judge James Zagel did not show leniency. He handed down a 14-year prison sentence, each one of the harshest ever recorded for political corruption in the United States. Zagel noted that the harm done to the fabric of democracy required a punishment that would serve as a severe deterrent to others. In March 2012, the former governor reported to the Federal Correctional Institution in Englewood, Colorado. Behind the razor wire of the low-security prison, the man who once commanded the attention of the nation was reduced to an inmate number. Throughout his incarceration, he remained defiant, frequently appearing in interviews to insist on his innocence and characterize himself as a victim of a corrupt judicial system. His luck finally turned in 2020 when President Donald Trump intervened. Citing the sentence as unfair and ridiculous, Trump commuted the remaining years of the sentence. After serving 8 years, Blagojevich walked out of prison, a free man but a convicted felon. The legacy of the scandal remains a dark chapter in the history of Illinois politics. In the wake of his arrest, the state legislature moved to change the laws regarding gubernatorial appointments, ensuring that a single individual could never again wield such absolute power over a vacant Senate seat without greater oversight. However, the damage to public trust was perhaps irreparable. For many citizens, the pay-to-play culture was no longer a cynical theory, but a proven reality. The image of a governor auctioning off a seat in the United States Senate became a global symbol of American political rot that lingered long after the headlines faded. Even today, the controversy persists. divided between those who see him as a corrupt official and those who believe the prosecution was a case of overreach. Critics argue his actions were a fundamental betrayal of democracy, justifying his sentence, while supporters claim his golden comments were merely political talk that was unfairly criminalized by federal authorities seeking a high-profile win. Now residing in Chicago, Blagojevich has emerged as a frequent media commentator, appearing on news programs to discuss current politics and his ongoing legal efforts to clear his name through the court system. While his political career is legally over, his presence in the public eye serves as a constant reminder of the 2008 scandal. Whether he is viewed as a misunderstood martyr or a convicted crook, his story remains a chilling cautionary tale about the thin line between populist ambition and criminal greed in modern times.